When upon life's billows you are tempest-tossed, when you are discouraged, thinking all is lost, count your many blessings, name them one by one, and it will surprise you what the Lord has done. Count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your blessings, see what God hath done. Count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your many blessings, see what God hath done. Are you ever burdened with the load of care? Does the cross seem heavy you are called to bear? Count your many blessings, every doubt will fly, and you will be singing as the days go by. Count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your blessings, see what God hath done. Count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your many blessings, see what God hath done. When you look to others with their lands and gold, think that Christ has promised you his wealth untold. Count your many blessings, money cannot buy your reward in heaven nor your home on high. Count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your blessings, see what God hath done. Count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your many blessings, see what God hath done. So amid the conflict, whether great or small, do not be discouraged, God is over all. Count your many blessings, angels will attend, help and comfort give you to your journey's end. Count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your blessings, see what God hath done. Count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your many blessings, see what God hath done.
Blue skies and rainbows and sunbeams from heaven are what I can see. When my Lord is living in me, I know that Jesus is well and alive today. He makes his home in my heart. Nevermore will I be all alone, since he promised me that we never would part. Tall mountains, green valleys, the beauty that surrounds me, all makes me aware of the one who made it all. I know that Jesus is well and alive today. He makes his home in my heart. Nevermore will I be all alone, since he promised me that we never would part. Green grass and flowers, all blooming in springtime, all works of the Master I live for each day. I know that Jesus is well and alive today. He makes his home in my heart. Nevermore will I be all alone, since he promised me that we never would part. I'm not ashamed of the gospel of Jesus, for it is the power that saves us today. I know that Jesus is well and alive today. He makes his home in my heart. Nevermore will I be all alone, since he promised me that we never
own way. Search me and try me, Master, today. Whiter than snow, Lord, wash me just now, as in thy presence humbly I bow. Have thine own way, Lord, have thine own way. Hold o'er my being absolute sway. Fill with thy Spirit till all shall see Christ only always living in me.
If the skies above you are gray, you are feeling so blue. If your cares and burdens seem great all the whole day through, there's a silver lining that shines in the heavenly land. Look by faith and see it, my friend. Trust in His promises, friend. Sing and be happy, press along to the goal. Trust in Him who leads you, He will keep your soul. Let all know where you be faithful, look to Jesus and Him and pray. Lift your voice and praise Him in song. Sing and be happy today. Often we are troubled and tired, sick with sorrow and pain. There are others living in sin, blessed with earthly gain. Take new courage, we cannot tell what tomorrow may bring. When the dark clouds vanish away, then your heart truly can sing. Sing and be happy, press along to the goal. Trust in Him who leads you, He will keep your soul. Let all know where you be faithful, look to Jesus and Him and pray. Lift your voice and praise Him in song. Sing and be happy today. Oft we fail to see the rainbow up in heaven's fair sky, when it seems the fortunes of earth frown and pass us by. There are things we know that are worth more than silver and gold, if we hope and trust Him each day, we shall have pleasure untold. Sing and be happy, press along to the goal. Trust in Him who leads you, He will keep your soul. Let all know where you be faithful, look to Jesus and Him and pray. Lift your voice and praise Him in song. Sing and be happy today.
Back here. Good morning. Welcome to December. Can you believe it? Only how many more shopping days until Christmas? I can't believe they actually started that back before July 4th. I think they were running Christmas trees in CVS and Walgreens already. It's been a short Christmas season because they extended it so long. But we're glad you're here. I hope you're enjoying the cool, brisk weather. I think it wakes everybody up a little bit. It makes it a little bit more bright-eyed on Sunday morning. But we're beginning a new study this quarter. I want to thank David so much for his lessons last quarter. Enjoyed that so much and look forward to having him again in the near future. I think that most of us in here are parents. Most of us are probably maybe even grandparents at this point. Don't you look forward to that baby's arrival with such anticipation? Deetra has a niece that just had their first child, and that 9 months for them just seemed like it took an eternity. And then the due date came, and the baby didn't. And then a week came, and the baby didn't. And another few days came, and she went to the doctor, and he says, well, I'll see you next week. You anticipate these babies so much, and we're just waiting for them. We're so excited when they get here. And they're always the most beautiful thing you've ever seen, right? And your baby or your grandbaby is the cutest that's ever been. I know that anticipation. I felt the same way with my children, our grandchildren. But you know, it's not long before those kids start growing. And they start growing, and they're just like video recorders, aren't they? Their eyes are just so big, and they're learning everything that's around them. Everything that they hear, everything that they see is just going into this little recorder. And then they keep growing, and they start to talk. And you can't wait for them to say that dada or that mama or whatever the first word is. And then you dread some of the words that they begin to pick up. No, for example. When your kid starts telling you no, you tell them to do something and then they say no. And they're starting to assert their independence. Well, unfortunately, they continue to grow and they continue to learn in their vocabulary, and then they learn this word, why? And when they begin to ask this question, why, it's always quite innocent, isn't it, in the beginning? It's they want to know why things work, why things, why is the moon go away at night? Why does the sun move across the sky? Why do birds tweet? Why do all these things? And so you patiently answer them, and you try to give them as much information as you think that they can handle. But then the questions start to come faster and more often. It's not just why, it's why. And I know a lot of mothers get to handle a lot more of the whys, it seems like, than the men do. But it just gets to be exhausting. And there's a comic strip that I really loved. It was called Calvin and Hobbes. I don't know if any of y'all read that. But I love the way some of the way the dad answered Calvin's why. And you'll have to go back, and if you have any of those, to read some of those. But I thought, I wish I had thought of that when my kids asked me why. And they kept going and kept going. But what happens when the kids keep asking why, when we tell them something to do? What do we have a tendency to get down to? Because I said so. Exactly. Because I said so. And the question is, who am I? Why is it because I said so? Why does I make it important? because you're the parent. And what does that imply? If you're the parent, you're the authority, you're in charge. What else? You have the responsibility. Exactly. And even more, you have the knowledge, right? You have the understanding of what the whole situation is. You have knowledge, perhaps, that they don't. You have experience that they definitely don't. And so it gets down to that point. And then they continue to grow a little older, and you give them instructions, and then it not only becomes why, it becomes but why. I know what you said, but why? Why is it important? And isn't that becoming a little bit more of a challenge as they begin to say, well, I know what you said, but why? I don't accept your answer. Isn't that basically when someone says, but why? That's not good enough. I want more. Give me more information. Make it make sense to me. But they don't stop there. They continue to grow, and as they continue into teenage, it's why? Why can't I go out with my friends? Why do I have to have a curfew? Why can't I go out with so-and-so? Why do I have to go to church? Why do I have to wear what you want me to wear? Why can't I have my hair? Why can't I go to this concert? Why can't I do all this? Why? And they're all wanting to be, at this point, challenges. They want to challenge our authority. They want to challenge our knowledge. They're beginning to question, do mom and dad really know what they're talking about, aren't they? And so we go through this period of dealing with our children that we experience what God experiences. Because have you ever wanted to ask God why? What are some of the questions that we would like God to answer? What do we want to know? Why? Just give us some examples. Why has this happened to me? Okay? What is the implication when we ask that question? Why has this happened to me? We don't deserve it. Isn't that really the bottom line there? Why are you doing this to me? Of all people in the world, why me? Because I don't deserve this. What's another question that we might ask God?
It's along the same line as, why have you blessed me so much?
Okay. There are times when we should ask God, why are you blessing me? Why are you blessing me so much? And what is the implication there? God, I don't deserve it. I don't deserve how good you are being to me. Why are you choosing to bless me anyway? What's other questions that we might want to know from God? David?
Why do things work the way they work? Why are the people that seemingly should get better, why do they always seem to struggle? And the people that seemingly should be punished, why do they always seem to be prospering?
Okay. That's a big one. Why do evil people prosper? Why do good people seem to struggle? Why is it so hard for somebody that seems to be a good moral person, a godly person even? Why do they struggle in this life with what are things that good people struggle with? Health? Finances? What else? Have you ever seen good people struggle with relationships? Is some of the whys we ask is, God, I'm praying for my child to be a faithful Christian. Why aren't they? I've prayed. Why aren't you answering my prayers? Or I've prayed for my spouse. I prayed for them to come to know you. I've prayed for them to be one with me in my pursuit of righteousness. It's not happening. Why, God? Another question that we ask is, why have you taken so long? Why do you take so long to answer prayers? Why don't you give me answers when I need them? And all of these questions, why, it made me think of when we get to heaven, are we going to get to the pearly gates? And I'm not sure who that's supposed to be. Some people think St. Peter's going to meet us at the gate. Some people think that Jesus is going to meet us. I don't know who's going to meet us at the gate. But whoever's there, can you imagine going to them and you get to the gates and you say, wait, before I come in, there are a few questions I need answered first. What question would you want to ask? All of these questions that we've asked. Why did my father have to die? Why did my child have to die? Why did my spouse have to die? Why did the evil people prosper? Father, why did you allow the Holocaust? Father, why did you allow COVID? Why did you allow all the evil things in the world? Why? And my question about this is, and I used to think about it, and I used to even answer people, especially Deidre and I have worked with the grief ministry for so many years. We used to answer grieving people. First of all, let me say, I don't answer this way anymore. But I always used to say, well, we'll understand it. When we get to heaven, you'll know why. I'm not so sure I agree with that anymore. We sing this song, Farther Along, and one of the lines in it is, farther along, we'll know all about it. Farther along, we'll understand why. And my question to you is, really? Is that anywhere in the Bible that God is going to explain why he did what he did? Why he allowed what he allowed? Why things happened in this life? And at this point in my life, and let me preface this is my opinion. I know other people have other opinions. I know one songwriter that does. But my thoughts now are, I'm not going to go up to heaven and ask God, why did you do this? Why did you do that? Why did you allow this? Why did you allow that? Because that comes across as saying, I need a good answer. I need you to justify yourself before I come in. And is that really the attitude we want to take when we approach heaven? I think the answer when it says we're going to understand why is, the answer is we trust God. That when we get to heaven and we come to God face to face, the overwhelming thought is going to be you are holy. You are the King. You are the righteous one. Whatever you did in my life is right. And Father, I'm just thankful to be here. And you fall down and worship. That's my thought. You're free to have your own. You're free to be wrong with the songwriter. No, I'm teasing. But that's just my opinion. But there is some questions that maybe we can answer why. Have you ever wondered why God took 2,000 years to reveal his plan of redemption for man? He kept hoping we'd pay attention sooner? Absolutely. It does seem like he got frustrated with man a few times during that 2,000 years, didn't it? But why, if man fell in the garden, and evidently God was right there because it said he came down and he was going to walk with man, and he went and found them when they were hiding. He said, why have you done this? He's talking to them apparently face to face. Why didn't God bring about the redemption of man right then? Why did he wait 2,000 years and go through this long, evolving plan to bring about man's redemption? Okay? The time wasn't right.
Because he knows us.
Because he knows us? What else? He wants everyone to be saved. And that's another question, is about not only 2,000 years, how many millions of people lived and died without seeing God's redemption plan?
Why did it take 10 years from the Jews to get it to the Gentiles got it?
10 years from the Jews till the Gentiles received the gospel. Why did it take so long? Let's look at some of the reasons. 1 Corinthians 2, 7-8, Paul says, "But we impart a secret and hidden wisdom of God, which God decreed before the ages for our glory." Again, God knew the plan before. God knew the entire plan, and he had it all set out from the very beginning. And it says he decreed it before the ages, before time. God knew what he was going to do. Sometimes we have the idea that Satan surprises God, that God is spending all his time in this 2,000 years. It's like a chess game between God and Satan. God moves and Satan moves. And then God counters Satan's move, and then Satan moves. And that God is always reacting to what Satan does. But isn't the opposite the actual truth? Satan is reacting to what our God does. He's trying to play catch up. He's trying to show God who is sovereign, but then God always shows who really is sovereign, who really is the king. But the question remains, why did we have to wait? Why the mystery? Why didn't he just come out and lay it all out? There is a fact that we hate to wait. And I like the image of that cat up there, because couldn't we, isn't there times when you just want to push that clock forward? Like every day you go to work, you wish you could just go ahead and push it on to quitting time. And isn't there sometimes when you actually want to push the clock backwards and spend more time in those moments that you enjoy, more time with the people that you love? We wish that we could control time, but we hate to wait. We want it all. And I have to confess, I will confess, I don't wait in traffic very well. When I'm trying to get somewhere and it's bumper to bumper and I'm pressed for time, and it's usually because I didn't leave when I was really needed to. It comes down to, it's probably my own fault, but I get frustrated in traffic. I can't stand it. Another place I hate to wait, and I'm not always the most tolerant as I should be, is in the checkout line, especially at Christmas time, when everyone's supposed to have good cheer and goodwill toward all men. I have a scientific mathematical algorithm that when I approach a checkout line that I apply, I take the age of the checker, the apparent skill that she shows, and multiply it times the number of items that are in the basket, and divide it by the number of customers that are ahead of me, and I work out this formula. And that's how I decide which line I'm going to get in, which one is going to get me out the fastest. Do what? Yeah, there is a flaw in my formula somewhere. I'm still tweaking it, because it does. In fact, Deetra and I did that the other night. We were at the store, and she wanted to get in this other line. I'm going, no, that's not the right line. We need to stay here. Well, I went ahead and succeeded, and she was right. That line was the better line. But what about waiting for a text reply? You remember when texts were so cool? We could text somebody instead of having to call them. But now you text somebody and you're waiting and waiting for that reply. And you think, okay, did they get my text? Did they look at their phone? Do they have their phone with them? Should I call them or should I wait? I don't want to bug them. And so we wait. And especially on Facebook, I found out, if you message somebody on Facebook and they don't reply in a night, you can unfriend them if they take too long to reply. But we don't want to wait for text. We don't want to wait for information. And that's the key. I want it all, and I want it now. I want the whole story. I'm a bottom line kind of person. Is anybody else like that? I like to get to the bottom line. When I took a new job, training seemed to take forever. I wanted the trainer to, just let me do it. Let me get on the computer and let me do it. Get out of my way and let me do the job. Let me learn the job. I don't want to be taking time to be taught. This is an actual playbook of the Minnesota Vikings for Kirk Cousins, who was their quarterback. I remember when I was in school playing ball, we had a playbook, and we had to learn all of these drills, and we would go through these plays, and we would do one over and over. I didn't want to do that. Let's go out and play the game. But how well do you play the game if you don't know the playbook? See Dallas Cowboys. Oh, I didn't say that. You have to learn the playbook before you can play the game. And so the coaches have to teach you the playbook gradually, because this play is the play we really want to do. This is the one we think is going to score, but you have to set it up by doing this play, this play, this play, and this play, and then you're ready to do the big play, the grand finale. And so you have to go through this training. We don't want to do that. We just want to go out and we want to play without having sufficient knowledge. Think about this. Even Jesus had to wait. Have you ever thought about that? Jesus had to wait 30 years before he could even start doing what God sent him to do in the first place. Do you think Jesus ever kind of was sitting there, okay, let's get on with it. Let's get on with it. We know that his disciples were ready for him to do what they thought he ought to do. They thought he was taking too long to do what they wanted him to do.
His mother said for him to do something, and he said, "My time is not yet."
Okay, we'll come back to that. You read my outline. Even Jesus had to wait. Let's look at some scriptures. John 7, verse 6. Jesus said to them, "My time has not yet come, but your time is here always. But my time hasn't come." Verse 8, "You go on up to the feast. I'm not going to the feast, for my time has not fully come. I have to wait." John 7:30, "So they were seeking to arrest him, but no one laid a hand on him because his hour had not yet come." John 8:20, "These words he spoke in the treasury as he taught in the temple, but no one arrested him because his hour had not yet come." So Jesus often said, "My time hasn't come. My hour hasn't come." And one time, finally, he says, Jesus answered them, "The hour has come." 33 years, Jesus waited for his hour. Even Jesus had to wait on God's plan. So not only did we have to do it. Let's use one example, and this is the one that Leah brought up. Jesus attends a wedding. On the third day, there was a wedding in Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. Jesus was invited to attend the wedding with his disciples. So his disciples were his plus one. I guess he had a plus 12. But his disciples came to the wedding with them. Then the wine ran out. The mother of Jesus came and said to him, "They have no wine." Now that sounds like a statement, doesn't it? She's just stating a fact. They have no wine. No, she was his mother. Statements don't always appear as they sound. I'll be watching a football game in my recliner. Deidre would be in the kitchen making Thanksgiving meal, everything, and she makes a statement. Les, the trash is full. Doesn't that sound like a similar statement? It's just a statement of fact. She said the wine has run out, the trash is full. And she may follow that up with, Les, Fergie needs to go out. Another statement, is it just a statement of fact or is it an imperative? It's an imperative calling for action. And men, if you're not married yet, I will give you a hint. It demands action now. It's not after the game is over. If you want to live a long and prosperous life, go now. Empty the trash. Take the dog out. But his mother said, they've run out of wine. Jesus answered, he said, woman, what does this have to do with me? My hour has not come. But what did Jesus do? He changed the water to wine. Now, that brings up a whole nother why. Why did he do that? He says, my hour hasn't come. Why did he go ahead and do that? Was it his love for his mother? Was it his respect for her? Or was it honoring what he knew was right? All of the above. Jesus honored her request. His mother, Jesus never answered her. He says, woman, my hour has not come. She turns around and tells the servants, you do whatever he says. She knew. She knew that Jesus was going to help. So what does that imply? She knew that he could, and I think she knew that he would. I think she knew his compassion, and he did what she asked. Isaiah 64:4, for of old no one has heard or perceived by the ear, no eye has seen a God besides you who acts for those who wait for him. God acts for those who wait. We wait. While we are waiting, God is working. So all this time, in the 30 years that Jesus was on earth, God was working. He was doing things. It's a key question. What is God doing while I'm waiting? While I'm waiting, is God working for me? It just seems like I'm waiting and God's doing nothing. How can we feel good about God working when we're waiting? We look back and see what God has done while others were waiting. God is working on it because it's not ready yet. It's possible when we're asking for it, whatever it may be for you, it may be a prospective spouse. It may be a job that you are seeking. It may be another person that you want them, for example, we mentioned a child to obey the gospel, a child to become faithful, a child to maybe get through an addiction. It may be for a friend or a family member to come to know God. It may be for all sorts of things. But God is working on it, but it hasn't been answered yet because it's not ready. God has more to do in them. Another reason that God is working and it doesn't come immediately is God may be working on me because I'm not ready yet. And that's the one I don't want to hear. God says, I can't give you what you ask because you're not ready for it. What if I ask God, I want to be rich. I want to have all the money I can stand. I want to have power. I want to have influence. And God says, you don't have the character to handle that. You don't have the humility to handle that. I heard one time a preacher was lamenting that the number in his congregation had gone down, and he says, it's all my fault. And he says he felt like he received a message that says, no, you can't take the blame for it, because if you do, then you're going to want to take the credit when it grows. The credit belongs to God. God is working. It's not about us, it's about what God is doing. God is working on me because I'm not ready yet. I may not have the character to have the opportunity for influence. God is developing me. It doesn't happen overnight. Sometimes God has to do something in you before God can do something through you. And when I was studying this, I hit something that I never really thought of. Consider Paul. Paul, was Saul and was a zealot for the God, Jehovah God of the Old Testament. And he was persecuting Christians because he didn't believe in the Messiah. He didn't believe that that's what God's plan was. And so he helped in the stoning of Stephen. He was dragging Christians into prison. He was dragging Christians to their death and breathing out, what does it say, fire and threats against them. God has a moment with him on the road to Damascus, and Paul is converted. Did Paul immediately turn that fervor working for the Lord? If you read the book of Acts, it sounds like he did, but let's really look at what happened. Paul spent 3 years in the desert, 3 years that God was teaching him in solitude. Why did it take so long? Couldn't God have given Paul the knowledge he needed to go preach to the Gentiles, to become the vessel to the Gentiles that he'd been chosen to be? Couldn't he have given it to him immediately? Yes, absolutely. But he didn't. He took 3 years to develop and teach Paul in the desert. But then was Paul ready to go out and to preach to the Gentiles? No. Paul went back and became a tent maker. A member of the Sanhedrin, the mighty Saul was a lowly tent maker, just making a living, just going to church like the rest of the Christians, becoming part of the community for 7 more years. Paul was developed for 10 years before he went on his first missionary journey. Did you ever think about that? Even Paul had to wait for God to work on him, to develop him. Isn't that possibly where Paul got the humility that when the converts wanted to bow down and worship him, he said, no, you get up. I am just a man like you. Paul learned humility, he learned discipline, and he learned to be content even in a jail cell after he'd been beaten and stripped and probably condemned to death. Paul says, I'm content, and begins to sing and to worship. Question, what do we do while we're waiting on God? So God's working. God, we see in the Bible over and over, God is working even while we're waiting, but are we supposed to do anything? Is our responsibility anywhere in that? Yes, we need to become a waiter or a waitress while we're waiting. What is a waiter or a waitress? A person whose job is to serve. So what was Paul doing in those 7 years? He was serving the local church. He was making a living. He was serving the community. He was being a servant before he became a leader. The best leaders know how to lead because they've learned how to serve. If you look at many companies, the best bosses are ones who started in the lower positions and they work their way up because they understand where you've been or where you're going. Isn't that why Jesus spent 30 years waiting? The Bible says he understands everything that we go through. He's been tempted in every way, just as we are. He served before he led. A server, a waiter, a waitress is a person who waits for a time, event, or opportunity. Isn't that what we're doing? We're waiting on God. We need to wait actively, we need to wait persistently, and we need to wait passionately. We need to believe, trust, and act while we're waiting on God. Let's look at God's timing. God creates the world. Everything's in it is very good. Genesis 1. Man brings sin into the world, and with it death and suffering. God begins to reveal a plan to restore man in Genesis 3. How did God start to reveal his plan? In Genesis 3, when he's talking to Adam and Eve after the fall, and he's talking to Satan. Doesn't he start to reveal the plan for Jesus when he says, and he will crush your head? His plan was already in place, and he begins to reveal it in Genesis 3. God reveals his plan further in the Old Testament through the patriarchs, the prophets, and throughout the Old Testament, all the way to the book of Malachi. But then God is silent for 400 years. God says nothing for 400 years. It's excruciating for the Jews that God has stopped prophesying through the prophets, that God has stopped revealing himself. There's no written word from God for 400 years in the period between the Testaments. So was God sleeping then? Did God take a break? Is he trying to figure out his next steps? No. Why is God taking so long to bring the Messiahs? The world wasn't ready yet. And let's look and see how God was working even during those 400 years. Because in Galatians 4:4, Paul says, but when the fullness of time has come, I think that's what Paul was talking about earlier, the time wasn't ready. It wasn't the fullness of time. The fullness of time had come. God sent his son, born of a woman, born under the law. God says, when everything was ready, I sent Jesus to be born of the virgin, to be born under the law. There are 4 ways God prepared the world for the Messiah. 4 ways that God was working during that 400-year period of silence. That we see God's faithfulness. We see that God is continuing to work for our benefit, for our good. The first is that a change in teaching and learning had to take place. What was the style of learning before the New Testament? It was called the didactic. And in this 400-year period, there was a change in learning. The Socratic replaced the didactic. Now, the didactic is where you went in and the teacher told you and you said nothing. You said, yes, sir. It was purely based on the teaching of the teacher. You didn't get to read the textbook. It's kind of like he had the scribes and Pharisees. They would have the Torah, and they would tell you what you need to know about God. They would tell you what you needed to know and what you needed to do to obey him, but you couldn't see it. You couldn't read it for yourself. All of your faith depended on the person that was teaching you. The Socratic method came in, and that's where students began to be involved in the process. They began to ask questions of the teacher. They began to read the Bible for themselves. They were encouraged to think critically and study rather than depending solely upon the teacher. We see an evidence of that when it says the Bereans were more faithful than the Thessalonians because they studied the scriptures daily. For what purpose? To see if the things that they were being taught were true. So the Socratic method says, check me out, study, see if what I'm saying is true. Don't depend on me to build your relationship with God. You build your relationship with God. The Old Testament had been translated into Greek. Now the Old Testament was available to the common man. And in accordance with that, Alexander had brought a common language to the world. When he conquered the world, he made Greek the universal language. Isn't that kind of odd? Isn't there one other time in history that man had a singular language? And God said, that's not a good idea. The Tower of Babel. Well, something's changed because now man has a universal language, and it's good because man can now read the Word of God. Man can hear the Word of God in a language, no matter where they live in the world. The Romans had brought peace and made travel possible. The diaspora had occurred because of various captivities. That was the biblical figures in Jerusalem and in Judea. They had scattered because of the various actions of captivity. They were carried away into Assyria. They were carried away into Babylon. Some were carried into Greece. Some were carried into Rome. Jews had spread out throughout the world. They had dispersed. The term comes from the word to sow or throughout, to distribute into foreign lands or scatter abroad. The deportation of the Jews brought people who were able to teach about God to the uttermost parts of the known world at that time. There were people in place to teach about God. For the first time, the good news could be spread throughout the entire known world. When the time was right, God sent forth his Son, born of a woman. God was working during those 400-year period. So we saw some reasons why God took so long to reveal his plan. Now, for the remainder of this series, we're going to study one method as to how God chose to reveal his plan, how he revealed it to us and to his people as he was working. During the time of the New Testament, God is still working. God is still revealing his plan. But in the Old Testament, God revealed his plan in steps. And our study is going to be about how did God reveal his plan through time. Do you love a good mystery? I love mystery books. I like to try to figure out who done it before they reveal it. What is a common method that mystery writers use to reveal who done it? It's called foreshadowing. Does anybody study foreshadowing in literature? It's where you give little clues here and there, and the reader begins to piece them all together and to come and see how the whole story comes together. Ephesians 1:9-10, Paul says, making known to us the mystery of his will according to his purpose, which he set forth in Christ, a plan for the fullness of time, there it is again, to unite all things in him, things in heaven and things on earth. Why is God taking so long to reveal? He has to have everything in place. And it's going to be revealed in Jesus Christ for what purpose? To unite heaven and earth, to bring us back into relationship with God. So, these next few weeks, we're going to be looking at the Bible and seeing how God revealed himself to us in the scriptures, how he used foreshadowing to reveal to us, how God created divine shadows. Now, I'd like to take credit for this idea, but I'm going to give credit to where credit is due. Many of y'all may remember Jay Crook, one of our former elders that recently moved up to Arkansas near Harding University. Well, Jay has written a book called Divine Shadows. It's a study book. It's available if you would like to get it on 21st Century Christian website. I think it's just under $6. It's a lesson book, and we're going to be basing our study loosely on Jay's study. And I say loosely because Jay's a thinker way ahead of me. So we're going to be studying what are the shadows that God revealed to reveal the Messiah in the Bible. And so we'll be studying the messianic prophecies through the Old Testament, the messianic stories about how God showed who Christ was going to be, what Christ was going to do, and how he was going to accomplish it. Thank you.